Well. Good night. It's June 17, 2014. And of course, you're listening to IRFM. And this is your favorite late night show. It's called Sexwise. I'm your host, Dr. Al Bailey. And tonight we're going to be looking at the status of fathers in Jamaica. And we intend to provide for you a fascinating and interesting overview of children's access to fathers over the past 180 years, the role of fathers, domestic violence and silent night, murder suicides in Jamaica, and the rights of men as fathers. We hope to have in studio fairly shortly a very special guest who has traveled all the way from Kingston to join us tonight, and we'll be joined shortly by Dr. Herbert Gale, who will walk us through all these fascinating issues relevant to fathers. It has been a very hot day. In fact, I was in Kingston and it reached up to 37.5 degrees centigrade this afternoon. So you can see that we've had a really hot day, and we apparently will be having a very hot summer. But I know that at this time of night you are much cooler, and you're all sitting in your living rooms, you're traveling in your various modes of transport, and we know you're listening to IRFM, and we're very happy to have you on board. You've been with us since 1998 and continues to have your dial locked on IRFM at 107.1, 107.3, 107.5, 107.7 and 107.9 on your FM band. We want to wish all fathers in Jamaica and around the world a happy week. We know you had a good Father's Day, and we anticipate that the rest of the week will be just as good, and of course the rest of your lives. We have been bashing fathers for too long in our country, and we know that there are many good fathers out there who are doing what fathers ought to do, and so we anticipate that this evening you will gain some insights into the role of fathers. You gain some insight into the role of fathers, what actually is preventing Jamaican fathers from living up to their expectations. And of course, we plan to provide for you some strategies to help you to cope and to adapt with the challenges of fatherhood. Because for too long, we have been told that fathers are really not that important. They really provide, the seed that produces the offspring, but it's the woman who really plays the critical role in childhood development. And of course, tonight we plan to debunk that myth. We are going to try and clarify the issues with respect to the role of fathers and help you to have a deeper understanding as to your role. So again, I hope you had a happy Father's Day, and we hope that the rest of the month and the year will be just as good for you. We have also in studio a special guest, Reverend Wayne L. Alexander, and he's pastor and founder of Missions Possible Community Church in Galena. He has been actively involved in pastoral ministry for over the past 16 years, and he has been serving in the parish of St. Mary for the past 8 years. He served as pastor of Port Maria and Galena New Testament Church of God. Reverend Alexander, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's really good to see you. We had two robust discussions a few months ago, and it's good to have you back. I can assure you, sir, that it will not be as controversial as it was then.
I'm sure about that.
But before we actually start looking at the whole issue of fatherhood, I'm sort of glad that you're here. You know, you're a man who doesn't mind a bit of controversy. And therefore, perhaps just to start the show, I wondered if you saw this headline in the newspaper, the Daily Gleaner today. Did you see it?
I'm sorry, I didn't actually.
Okay. Just to sensitize the listeners to a most interesting headline in the Jamaica Daily Gleaner today, Tuesday, June 17, 2014. And the headline screamed, "Indecent exposure. Oral, anal sex acceptance sneaked into JFJ course in children's home." And this was written by Ryan Jones and Arthur Hall. And the reporter said there are signs emerging that the sexual education course introduced into 6 private children's homes by human rights group Jamaicans for Justice was hijacked by gay rights promoters. The target group of the project was approximately 120 children aged 12 to 17 who are current wards at the Jamaica National Children's Home, St. John's Bosco Home, Elsie Bernard Girls Home, Sunbeam Home for Boys, and Alpha Boys Home. The program, titled Realizing Sexual and Reproductive Health Responsibly, JFJ's pilot intervention in children's home, for which content was originally provided by the Jamaica Family Planning Association, was funded by the Caribbean Vulnerable Communities. Youth Minister Lisa Hanna has ordered that the 6 homes be told to end the course immediately. Interesting, Reverend. You know, the rationale behind this screaming headline is that apparently this course on sex education was introducing other types of human sexuality into the curriculum. And apparently the primary purpose behind this was to teach young people how to advocate for themselves. And I'm very surprised at the boldness of the headline, because it seems a little risque. Oral and anal acceptance sneaked into course in children's home. No, sir. I can see Dr. Gale is arriving, but since you're in your hot seat, as a man of the cloth, as it were, do you believe in sex education?
Well, I believe, of course, that our nation, our children need to be informed as it relates to their sexuality.
Oh, you do?
Yes. However, though, as it relates to the curriculum, then I might have second guesses as it relates to the nature, the outline of the curriculum. Based on what I've seen there on the headlines, it would seem as if they're exposed there to oral and anal sex.
Yes.
And I'm just wondering if the authorities have not vetted this curriculum before, or have seen it before it entered.
Well, the answer to your question is no. The Honourable Minister did not know about it, and the CDA head did not know about it. It was actually promulgated by Jamaicans for Justice. And the argument that has been posited, and it was really hot on the talk show programs today, was whether children really ought to be exposed to alternative sexual activities. I have a concern with that. The premise, I think, is wrong. The children are not aware of what's going on, and so they perhaps ought not to be told about what's happening, which is in the world of sexuality, until they have reached. In fact, I heard a politician arguing that children should not be exposed to other types of sexual information until they're around 18. No, sir. We know that boys start having sex at 13 years in Jamaica. We know that we have a high teenage pregnancy rate in Jamaica. Therefore, our children are sexual. Why should we not at least advise them as to what's happening in the real world?
Well, I believe that they should be guided, because, as you have said, they have been exposed from a very young age. I mean, you might not... Don't be fooled. I mean, these children are exposed to pornographic stuff and things like those, and they're learning some wrong concepts as it relates to sexuality.
Okay.
Hence, sex education, in its right perspective, is relevant to guide them in the right directions.
Okay, sir. Totally agree with you. But that was just an interesting tidbit as we start this program. You're listening to IRFM, and this is, of course, your favorite late night show. It's called Sex Wise. I'm your host, Dr. Al Bailey, and in fact, we have been joined by our special guest tonight. He is none other than Dr. Herbert Gale, who in fact is going to walk us through some interesting and complex issues with respect to fatherhood. Okay, and we are going to be looking at some interesting issues. We're going to be looking at children's access to fathers over the past 180 years, the role of fathers, domestic violence and silent night, murder, suicides in Jamaica, the rights of men as fathers. And we also have another special guest, Reverend Wayne Alexander, who is pastor and founder of Missions Possible Community Church in Galena. Over the next 2 hours or so, we'll be looking at the roles of fathers as a provider, teacher, playmate, companion, trainer, servant, and procreator. We'll be looking at the 5 P's that define fathers. Fathers should be described as a participator, problem solver, playmate, principal guide, provider, and preparer. We also will be looking at domestic violence and, of course, why are so many men becoming victims of domestic abuse against men in the home is on the rise. So we have an interest. Why are so many men becoming victims of domestic abuse against men in the home is on the rise. So we have an interesting program lineup for you. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back.
Now, Ezekiel, you love me?
Ivy.
Ezekiel, you wanna marry me again?
Ivy.
Ezekiel, the lamp turn over.
Back, you're listening to IRFM, and this is your late night show. It's called Sex Wise. I'm your host, Dr. Al Bailey, and we have been joined by Dr. Herbert Gale, anthropologist and lecturer in the Department of Sociology and Social Work, chairman of Fathers Incorporated, and he has also been accompanied by Michael Edward James, program coordinator of Fathers Inc., and we have a special guest in studio, Reverend Wayne Alexander, pastor and founder of Missions Possible Community Church in Galena, and of course, I'm your host, Dr. Al Bailey. I just want to remind you that my book's explanation is available at all your local bookstores, and so you need to get yourself a copy and give me some feedback as to what you think about the book. Tonight we're going to be discussing the status of fathers in Jamaica. We are going to be looking at children's access to fathers over the past 180 years, the role of fathers, domestic violence and silent night, murder, suicides in Jamaica, and the rights of fathers. Dr. Gale, welcome to IRFM. And I'm going to do an interesting thing. I'm now going to hand the show over to you, boss, because I know that you're a co-host and a host yourself.
All right.
Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, over to Dr. Herbert Gale.
All right. Well, hey, Jamaica, how you doing? All right. I know you've been listening to IRFM tonight, and I know you've been tuned in, ready to listen and to participate, actually. In fact, participation is very critical in this sense. As we try to, 2 things we're setting out to do tonight. We're trying to help Jamaica with some material, some factual material, because one author, I think his name is John Jebson, said that fathers are the most misunderstood people on earth.
I totally agree. They just don't understand us.
People construct all kinds of material, and then because fathers don't talk a lot, right, Pastor? we don't do too much of the chatting. We do. Therefore, people are able to just say whatever they want. So what we're going to do tonight is that we're going to present you with a set of material, and we're going to present you with about 5 sets of material. Right, so I will serve mostly as your data box. All right, and then we're going to have broad discussions on them. Michael Edward James will also be helping us with one section that's a role of fathers, right, Mike?
Yes, definitely.
Right, and so we're going to be looking at some basic things, and then we're going to kick the lines open so that you can talk to us. All right. So let's begin with a little bit of historical background about fathers in Jamaica, because fathers in Jamaica, Barbados, Trinidad, and all of these different countries that are part of the New World is a little bit different from fathers in Europe and elsewhere, All right, because fathering began in 1834.
Are you for real? I mean, prior to that, we were not fathers.
We were.
What were we? Just.
We were part of a husbandry.
So that's an interesting point. You're saying that fathering just begun recently. Then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Fatherhood for Jamaicans. It's like I've been trying to say to people. In fact, let me give people a parallel. Teenage pregnancies are 1950s word.
Oh.
See, a lot of Jamaicans, and I keep saying to Jamaicans, try and know your history. Teenage pregnancy is a 1950s word, because before you passed elementary school, at 15, you would not be in school anyway. So you would have been someplace, whether you want to get pregnant, yes or no. It's a pretty recent word. And it's the same thing with fatherhood in Jamaica. We're not 500-year-old. And we should not be assessed in that manner, because when the slave trade ended and then emancipation, which is more important, this is 1838, the date that is more important to us in our history. We basically had to start from zero, and this is the point I've been trying to get into people's heads. So I'm going to provide you the material from then. I'm going to take you through some of the material that I have been privy by examining from the colonial office in England when I studied there, and that is that before 1948, the highest count of children who had their fathers in their household would have been, the highest number I've seen is 18%.
Oh,
18 as in one with an 8.
I hear you. Prior to that, 82% of fathers were missing.
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Okay.
And they would have been missing because the point is that on a slave plantation, you had no access to your children, unless there were special cases. And if you look at some of the works, you'll see that there are special cases where the mother of the children had a good relationship with Busha and with the plantation owner, and therefore had a chance to allow the father to come and visit the children on the plantation. So in other words, we didn't have a clear situation where there was a family. There was no family setting as we have it today on the plantation.
Just back up a bit. You're saying, based on the data you've unearthed, up to 1948, only 18% of men were present as
in their children's home.
Okay.
Right. So if you look at the survey of living condition and the population census now, that shows that 42% of all children birth to 8 years old, which is Jamaica, that is the important figure to look at. It's birth to 8 years old that is considered to be early childhood, that the assessment is critical. Because after 8 years old, whatever we do, birth to 8 years old, you either have a damaged child, a productive child, whatever we create birth to 8 years old, it's very difficult to change that. All right, so that is why a lot of the discussions about children's behavior and so forth centers around birth to 8 years old.
So you're saying, Herbs, that as at now, only 42% of our men.
No, but you say only. But if you understand that in 19,
I withdraw the
right. If you understand that we were at 0, then we were at 18. Then we were at 23%. Then if you look at the 2001 census, it shows 37%. Oh. And 2011 shows us 42%. We are growing.
We are doing well. Yeah. So therefore,
I don't know. I don't know if I want to say we're doing well, but I'm saying that we are growing.
We are moving in the right direction.
We are moving in the right direction.
And you said we
want to encourage the men who are doing that, and we want to also encourage the ones who have not yet joined the good bandwagon. Yeah,
because you're saying the concept of fatherhood really only began in 1834.
It's 180 years
would
old.
you just like to remind the listeners of why that is so? Because people really can't wrap their head around this reality.
You see, people don't remember that on a plantation, the idea is to see, and let me try and explain for people, right? I'm 6 feet 1.5 inches tall. All right, Pastor, you're about that height.
I'm 6'2".
6'2", right?
I will not mention. I refuse to mention my height on national radio.
All right, so on a plantation, Pastor and myself would have been taken away, right, and be released. Notice the words, released as a breeding machine on plantations because of our height.
Okay.
Because of how big we are.
I would despair that.
You may be asked to do half of the work. but the two of us who are the two bigger ones in here would have been given a task to produce as many children as we could, because the plantation need the hands.
Okay.
And this was, of course, forced cheap labor. Mm-hmm. So the more we could produce, Pastor Alexander and myself, is the more that plantation would be good. And there were cases, if you read carefully, where would have been even asked to check another plantation who might be a cousin to the other plantation owner. That is what we had.
It's a very sobering point you just made. You know what? Men were really farmed out to procreate. And they were breeders.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
You know,
so the mothers had access to their children somewhat.
Yes.
Not fully, somewhat. Right?
An uncomfortable truth.
Right. At least they knew where they were. But we couldn't know. Let's get to my mother who fathered me.
Yes.
And we're talking now about, of course, Edith Clark's work. And she showed 3 communities, and we want to leave the middle class community called Orange Grove and the other community. I want to focus on the one that was surrounding the cane field. When these men, remember that for many, many years, up to the 1950s, up to the pre-war period, men would go you have pre-season for plantation, for the cane, and you have post-season. For the entire cane season, the men would move from one plantation to the other plantation and just cut cane. And while they're there, they would, of course, procreate with the women around. And, of course, when the season was up, they would night and they move back to their community, some up to 100 miles away. They would have no idea whether or not they had children left behind. And therefore, my mother fathered me. That is where the idea of my mother fathered me came from. So it's not a situation that, in fact, some traces have been shown that up to 60% of these fathers did not even know that they had children left behind. They were simply cutting cane and cutting other cane, quote unquote.
Wow. up to 60%.
Up to 60% in some of the tracers show that they had no idea that they had children left behind. Some in fact learned that they had children. They came back the next season because remember they didn't have cell phones for the woman to know. Right? So that is where we're coming from.
You know what you're saying, Dr. Gale, is very sobering, because I have had this discussion with you before and with a psychologist, and with Wendell Abel, and he's arguing that this kind of social conditioning is passed on from one generation to the next.
Yes.
Is that so?
Yes.
Why can't we break out of it?
You don't break out of, you see, social structures are very difficult to break.
Okay, hold that point for me. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back.
Imagine it every day.
Back, you're listening to IRFM, and this is your late night show. It's called Sex Wise. I'm your host, Dr. Al Bailey, and we have my co-host tonight, of course, is Dr. Herbert Gale, anthropologist and lecturer in the Department of Sociology and Social Work, chairman of Fathers Inc. He is accompanied by Michael Edward James, program coordinator of Fathers Inc. And our special guest in studio tonight is Reverend Waynell Alexander, pastor and founder of Missions Possible Community Church in Galena. We're looking tonight at the status of fathers in Jamaica, and Dr. Gale started off by some very sobering data that fatherhood in Jamaica started in 1834. And he has informed us that children's access to fathers over the past 180 years is in fact improving quite nicely. Okay, continue your discussion.
Right. So, right. So we are in the 21st century now, and what we've been finding is that we're going to go back a little bit to Barry Sivan's work. First of all, with the Women's Center of Jamaica Foundation, I think that was where we got the first wake up that much of what let me in fact not be kind. Let me be honest. The majority of what we hear about fathers were actually erroneous, because in that study we found that between 75 and 80% of the young men who impregnated those girls actually stayed by them. Even in the tracer study 10 years later, we found 3/4 of those families still intact. So, for us to have this discussion, and this was the first study was 1996, I think 2001. We're talking about studies that are quite recent. 2004 study, this was the adolescents of St. Catherine, found very similar data. And then when you take the raw data of the survey of living conditions from 2010, 2012, and you work it through with studies done by Professor Barry Shavans, myself, and others, you find that Jamaican children, 70% of Jamaican children have access to their fathers.
That's interesting though, because you're saying that 75 to 80% of young men actually stick around.
Yes.
A lot of women will tell you that that's not true.
But we have a little spice to add to that.
Yes.
Because we're saying that 42% of children have their fathers in their homes.
Right.
We're saying that you should add on top of that 28% of children, their fathers are not in their home, and we're going to give you a big word. Their fathers are extra residential. All right? That means that the father lives around the corner, and you can go to your father or collect your lunch money and ray. All right, we're going to translate that into English language. that means that those fathers are active. In fact, when we get to the roles of the fathers, which Michael is going to present to us a little bit, we are going to understand what I mean. But the point is that 28% of Jamaican children are also suggesting that it is very critical, that their fathers are very critical in their lives. Now, Michael did a study with Professor Patricia Anderson, in which you found that less than 10% of children do not know their fathers. Am I correct?
Yes, that's correct.
What was the exact percentage, you remember? It was about 8 or 9%?
Yes.
All right.
Is as low as that?
Yes. So in other words, within this 30%, we have the jackets. Right, it's a very serious 30%. So 70% of children have access to their fathers, and their fathers are active. 30% the fathers are missing. That's about 1/10 of all our children have missing fathers. Right, and all the studies, I've never seen a study in which more than 10% of children says my father is completely missing. All right, there is another set where the fathers are not just missing. The child cannot really tell whether or not the person that there's a claim is his or her father is a father, because 1 out of 5 children in Jamaica is a jacket. We're not even going to. I can tell you, we have data from 5 different sources. Some of these sources we cannot even list, where we are certain. I can give you the spreadsheet. The spreadsheet runs 21% to 75% of all men who've gone and complained that I don't think that this child is mine. I'm saying the lowest percentages we found, 21%. The highest in any cohort or batch of data, 75%, where the child is actually not his. But we will not use that big stagger to address anything, because this is a father saying, I don't think he's my pitney.
Yes.
Right? And in Jamaica, we have what is called village DNA, where grandma take up the child and say, yes, him too big is a girl. That's called village DNA. We're not talking about any of those. We're talking about arbitrarily tested children in studies have shown that someplace between 18 and 21% of Jamaican children do not know who their actual father is, on the grounds that some raffling was done, to use Jamaican terms.
It's interesting because just to add a little color to the discussion, we are known to be an extremely religious country.
Yes.
Pastor, I mean, what's happening here? Why are the women,
why so many jackets,
misguided? The church has failed, right?
Pastor, I have to pray for them.
I would say the churches have failed,
Church is working.
But of course, you'll agree with me that fatherhood comes with responsibilities.
Yes.
So as long as they have that little 5 minutes or less of excitement, and then down the road, upon return for another round of excitement, they get the news that there's pregnancy.
Yes.
And it's yours. So the man run away. Because the average man around the road, they don't They are afraid of responsibilities.
Right, but Pastor, what we found is a little bit different. What we found is that a lot of children that are born to young fathers, and Professor Barry Shivans has done a lot of work in this area, meaning fathers below the age of 24. So we're talking about youth, right? Not extended youth, which is 34, but youth, core youth. And what we found in the Women's Center of Jamaica Foundation study is that 3/4 of them stick around, including 1 out of 6 of them will actually give up school to take care of their children. Now, this is not the data that we have spreading on the road like is kerosene oil. People think that when a boy gets a girl pregnant, the girl drops out of school and her life done, and the boy run up and down and sing tadi tadu tadu like a fool on the road. There's no such thing. There are no such data. The data show that the girl, 90% of these girls are likely to return to school because our system, we have a system in Jamaica for them to return to school. The data show that 90% of the boys remain in school, and 10% of them will fall out, just like the girl, because of the pregnancy. Nobody ever says these things. Yet the data, they can ask, they can call you, they can find out, but nobody wants to hear these things. They want to hear the girl has soft enough, she are dead enough, and the boy run up and down a fly kite. It's just complete nonsense.
Okay. So you're actually removing the scales from our eyes, and you're listening to IRFM, and this is your late night show. It's called Sex Wise. I'm your host, Dr. Al Bailey, and we have in studio Dr. Herbert Gale, anthropologist and lecturer in the Department of Sociology and Social Work, chairman of Fathers Inc. He has been accompanied by Michael Edward James, program coordinator of Fathers Inc., and our special guest is Reverend Waynell Alexander, pastor and founder of Missions Possible Community Church in Galena. We're looking at the status of fathers in Jamaica, and of course, we start off with children's access to fathers over the past 80 years. And so you were arguing that a significant number of men do stick around, contrary to popular belief, and that boys, youth, oftentimes drop out of school to help to support their youth.
Right. Okay. But here's a truth that we cannot escape. Mm-hmm. If you come from Kingston, and if you are socialized to think that Kingston is Jamaica, just like how the US would play, the World Series and it's them alone playing, Kingstonians and other urban people have this bad habit of thinking that anything that any maca or any mosquito that bite them in town, bite everybody else. Right? So the fact is that if you, when we get into some of the data, you'll see that urban folk and rural folk are very different. Parishes like Westmoreland, Trelawney, St. Elizabeth have like 70 fathers, 70%, 65% fathers in the homes of children, compared to Kingston with its low 30-odd%. And this is why people see Kingston or they see Montego Bay and they go, that is Jamaica. But the point is that Jamaica is less than 60% urban. There's a massive section of Jamaica that helps to bring down the average, the bad averages of the urban centers. Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to make people know, don't go down the road and say, everybody in your lane don't have a father, therefore everybody in Jamaica don't have a father. Because I could be cruel enough to tell you that where I grew up in the country, everybody had a father. And I could be cruel enough to say, well, everybody in Jamaica have a father then, because everybody who run where I grew up have a father. So you have to begin to work with data, and this is what I'm trying to get people to look at a broader picture rather than the fact that 5 persons and all 5 of them now know Papa. Therefore, nobody in Jamaica have a Papa. But that's how people are arguing.
In terms of the access to fathers, from the data you have at your disposal, are they doing a good job in terms of providing for their children?
Right, and I'm going to turn you over to Michael, who's going to talk about the role of fathers, and he will talk a little bit about provision, and then we'll pick up from there.
No problem. Go ahead, Michael.
Hi, good evening. There are 4 main roles for fathers, and these are, as you said, provision, protection, nurturing, and being a role model. Now, there was a study done by Dr. Herbert Gale in 2011. Yes, 2011. That covered 7. It's a snapshot study. It covered 7 parishes and 240 participants that were divided by sex and socio-economic status. So we had rural, urban, and peri-urban.
Right.
Yes, and in that study, we wanted to find out the perception of Jamaicans, what they felt was the main role for fathers. And what we found out was that 78%, including male and female, believe that provision was the most important role.
Yeah. Man have money.
Yes, and this was...
A man must have money.
Yes.
Okay.
And this was followed by protection, which came in at around 46%.
Yes.
And nurturing came in around 38%. And the role model was about 25 or 20.
That's very sobering because they're uninformed and perhaps had been part of that group. Would have thought that, protection and role modeling was critical. I mean, I would like my children to emulate me, to be like me.
How middle class of you?
and that's what we found out in the middle class.
Oh my goodness! Yeah,
that immediately says that he has a few shillings. But a mother will tell you, listen to me. He said, listen to me, Herbs. We can't talk about nurture and all of something, When hungry, lick down here, it's provision we talking about. Provision at the boss.
Okay, go ahead, Michael.
Yes, and also when we ask for combinations of the best two, provision and protection came as the highest, followed by provision and role model.
Yes. Right.
Yeah. And nurture and role model came dead last.
Yes. Just repeat that for me, because that's very sobering stuff. Provision
yes, provision and protection was the highest combination.
Yes.
And that was followed by provision and role model.
Yes.
And nurture and role model was the one that came last. And
there was only 16% of people who had that combination
of nurture and role model.
That means you're broke, Yeah. Pastor has converted you, and you're a very good nurturer.
Yes.
So you've gone to all the workshops, and you have a very nice personality, and the children love you to bits, right? Right. So you're a good role model,
yes.
Right? And you're very nurturing, but of course you don't have any money. And the 2004 study shows that your highest score out of 10 will be 4 out of 10, which means a failure. So if a father is nurturing in Jamaica, and this study had 480 families, if a father is nurturing, extremely nurturing, in some cases more nurturing than the mother, plait here, we've seen some of these fathers who came up in that study were just different, right? And he is a role model, honest, works hard, goes to PTA, good example in the community. The children and the mothers gave them, despite everything, 4 out of 10 because they don't have no money.
They're so unkind.
Hold on. The father who lived abroad,
yes,
and sent money home,
got a higher rating
with 1 phone call per week, because we average the phone calls per week.
Yes,
got average scores of 9 out of 10.
Pastor,
Pastor, you help us break that.
Yeah. What's that? Why are we so
hung up on the money?
Yeah, so worldly, so gravolicious.
Well, these are really eye-opening information for me too. But as they say, money makes the world.
And this included church people.
As they say, money makes the world go round.
But then, my kid, if provision, protection, nurturing, and role model are the key parameters that women use to judge a man, I'm a little concerned here. If provision and protection is not very high, she's going to leave him, right?
The chances are, and as we alluded earlier in regards to why there's so much jacket, this is one of the areas, because a woman will then look and find which one of her partners is most suitable to provide her economically.
Listen to this bombshell. We had 11 gunmen in the study. When we asked for people's occupation, 11 of the men were gunmen, and their average score was 7.
Oh,
higher than the great broke fathers. There's a lot we need to change in this country.
Yeah. So the gunman got a score of 7 out of 10.
7 out of 10 was the average score for the 11 gunmen.
The broke pocket man got
and
about 2.
And the broke pocket, nice, decent father, but him unemployed,
yes,
got a score of 4.
for.
We have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, apparently. You continue, Michael.
Yes, well, as we allude, the concern is that there's too much emphasis placed on provision. And we have found that nurturing is very important, and being a role model is extremely important also for the holistic development of the child. The more nurturing a father is from conception to adulthood, is the more self-esteem a adult has. The less susceptible to deviant behavior. We find that boys are less aggressive, and girls are less likely to be involved in sexual behavior. Also, interesting interesting study done by Penn State has shown that if a father is close to their adolescent daughter, or their pre-pubescent daughter, he releases pheromones that create a later stage of sexual maturity.
Right.
And the reverse is caused when there's either a stepfather or half brother. Once there's no direct blood link,
right,
they can have early sexual maturity.
Can you say that for the man on the roadside? Because that was serious Yui stuff.
Yeah, well, what you're saying is that if the more you stay in the house and be a nurturing father, is the least likely that your daughter will become sexually active.
Start menstruation early.
Yes.
And in fact, the study shows that the average, a father in the house and a father outside of the house, the average menstruation time was 18 months gap.
In other words, it is delayed.
It's delayed. And when menstruation is delayed, the girl's cognition is increased.
Oh, are you serious?
So girls with fathers are brighter. Let's just put it in market. This is very simplistic. Don't judge me on this. But overall, girls with fathers, good fathers in their house, are expected to perform academically better.
It's interesting that you say that, because I'm kind of wondering why my two daughters are so bright. I don't know what's going on. but seriously, I could share something else with you, because you mentioned the whole issue of pheromones. And in my book, I have a whole chapter called Sensational Sex, which has to do with the impact of odors on human sexuality. Right. What they found, interestingly, is that girls oftentimes are attracted to men who smell like their fathers.
Yes.
And I found that amazing because I've discussed that with women, and they said if they smell a man that reminds their father, they immediately look towards him. They almost, there's a bonding.
Yes.
And that would have occurred because of the contact over the years, especially when the child was very close to you during, what do you call it, from birth to age,
early
childhood. And but I never actually saw the data that a man who's close to his daughter, that it will delay the menses and also decrease the incidence of early sexual activity.
Right.
And it's a wake-up call, I think, this show to the men, that if they really want to preserve the chastity of their girls, they should be with them.
Yes. You see, a lot of people, I find that a lot of studies have spent time on fathers and sons, and they haven't been looking enough at fathers and their daughters. Because, there's a very idle jest that it says that whatever a girl becomes is the father's fault. And it's a little bit more than idle jest. It's something that we should take very seriously, because our daughters really hung upon us. Whatever it is that we are, that's what they use as the blueprint for other men.
Are you serious? Which would suggest, therefore, that if the father isn't around, she has no template in which to inform her own behavior in the future.
The second person would be a male relative, right? And that, of course, crosses very delicate waters in some cases, which we can't get into too much, but I think people understand me. The third group would be male teacher, and the fourth group would be pastors. So imagine a girl who doesn't go to church, pastor, barely go to school, or her class don't have a male teacher, because those are her prime commodities, right? You see, we're in trouble.
So Wayne. Michael, you're actually arguing that the presence of the father decrease aggression in in boys.
Yes, it does.
Yes.
You know, it's interesting, you know, because I know 2 little kids, they're now 5. The father has never appeared, he just disappeared. And they're extremely aggressive.
One of the MIA ones.
Yes, and they're extremely aggressive. And the mother beats them regularly. But that doesn't in any way modify their aggression.
Well, what
Increases it, actually. Flogging increases aggression.
Okay.
what studies have also shown is that the fathers playing with their children is very important for the regulation of emotions and understanding behavior.
Right.
The mother is usually, caught up in regards to the general upkeep, love and care, so she's not really as playful. But what happens when children play with their fathers? It provides them with problem-solving skills and challenges. For instance, example, when the father has a ball that is far away from the baby now has to, construct and think how to get that ball, and that work, goes along in their life.
Right brain development.
Yes.
Because they have to look at space
Yes.
and distance and work out a quotient
Yes.
to get the ball.
Are there any studies done from your part that provides factual details as it relates to a saying that we have in Jamaica that daughters are closer to their fathers?
Oh, that's quite scientific. That's accepted in the entire world.
Yeah.
Right, because in fact the greatest bond, right, and you can look at the work of John Bowlby, that's Bollby, is between a mother and a son. Alright, so while we're talking about fathers, we have to also look at the other side. The second greatest bond is between father and daughter. These bonds are deeper, than husband and wives. Alright, these are not joke bonds. Alright, when you study violence, you look at how boys get fractured because mother is missing. How boys become not just fractured, but brutal when father and mother are missing. So children actually need both parents.
And we're going to discuss that in a little while. So when I keep on saying, Pastor, I'm very spiritual tonight. But seriously, Michael, you're saying that when fathers play, it regulates emotions.
Yes, regulates emotions, and also because the father is seen as such a big and strong figure, the child is observing this big and strong figure actually being calm and timid to them. So they're actually learning now how to relegate their strengths.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. Any other role that you want to remind us of?
Well, the role model is very important also, especially when it comes to future relationships, man and woman relationships. Because the boy now, if the boy sees his father being aggressive to a woman, he's most likely to be aggressive to his future spouse or partner.
His sister, first
Yes.
of all. He dominates his sister in a very brutal way.
Yes.
That's the case.
Well, we have a problem then, gentlemen, because if women are primarily interested in provision, followed by protection, and nurturing and role model seems to assume a fairly low level on the totem pole. What then are the outcome for our children?
All right, but let's just be honest about it, though, because one of the things we are certain of, because we don't want to very subtly blame women.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So, right.
Okay.
Kind of a generalship blame, right?
Okay.
The truth is, as soon as women have money, they switch to the gentler roles.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
So
sir.
when a woman broke, right, she tell you that, listen, you and your higher order, you and your higher order roles of fathers are not important to me. I need money to depend on them.
Yes.
When she's employed or when the family is economically stable, right, which is why if Michael, we don't have the time now to give you everything on this study, but what we find is that people who had money, who were economically stable, actually switched to the higher roles, which is nurturing and being a role model. But once a family was broke or in economic crisis, those became unimportant or far less important.
Okay, so we're therefore looking at the whole impact of poverty on behavior.
Right.
And so, Michael, you would argue then that poverty does impact significantly on behavior, and so the fathers might not be able to provide the kind of role. And I suspect that in some instances, if they can't provide, the women don't want them around.
Right, half a man. They become half a man. The 1993 to 2001 study, the Male Socialization Project, I think to about 1998, someplace there, rather not 2001, showed that in some communities, once a man was employed for more than 6 months, he was described in various pseudonyms and so forth as a half a man. And the woman would express that, you know, you have to kind of remove the half a man by quarreling or being antagonistic towards him or starting a fight so that a whole a man can come in.
Okay, if he's not so if he's not meeting up to her expectations,
right,
she's going to make sure she gets rid of him.
Yes.
Okay.
She'll find ways, because there are 6 blocks when a family falls into very serious economic crisis. There are 6 blocks or phases that the families go through. The first thing the family does is puts pressure on the man, on the male. The second is the female finds an additional job, right? Or she starts a job if she didn't have one. The third block is if there's a boy, the boy is asked to help provide for the family, so he's taken out of school. The fourth block is that the mother begins to do part-time prostitution. All right. The fifth block is that the children are sent to aunties and uncles, so that's child shifting. And the sixth block is that the daughter is pimped.
That's very sobering. You said mother does part-time prostitution.
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
Well, Jamaica has lots of different words, but it's the same thing. Right? In other words, once we go into the field and we find a mother who is pimping her daughter, we know that family has reached the final block. Yeah. And we immediately know that family cannot go any further. Right? In other words, if you look very carefully, and that's why we're saying to people that I've always said it's not poverty that destroys people, it's sometimes our reaction to poverty that is destructive. Because I'm from a very poor family, and I've never seen anybody in my family steal. Right?
You're listening to IFM, and this is your late night show. It's called Sex Wise. I'm your host, Dr. Al Bailey, and my co-host tonight is Dr. Herbert Gill, anthropologist and lecturer in the Department of Sociology and Social Work, chairman of Fathers Inc. He's joined by Michael Edward James, program coordinator, Fathers Inc. And we have a special guest, Reverend Wayne L. Alexander, pastor and founder of Missions Possible Community Church in Galena. We're discussing tonight an interesting topic, the status of fathers in Jamaica. We just recently looked at children's access to fathers over the past 180 years, and now we are looking at the role of fathers in society. Herbs, half a man. That's so derogatory. I don't like it, I mean, surely the lady should give the guy a chance,
But you know what is tricky?
Yes.
Because when they take the batch of mothers who have removed the half a man, right? 1 out of 3, 35% of all the women who remove the half a man found a quarter man, so it's a very rocky road, It's quarter man, Women will tell me when I do the tracer study, hers me I tell honestly, that one here was. That one here a quarter man.
Okay. And my concern then is that if there are children, if this half man, quote unquote, had a child, then and the mother removes him from the home, what are the consequences?
We're talking about GBV, we're talking about gender-based violence. Because that is one of the major crises. In fact, let me just give you the figures on that. All right? Because that's an area in which we have a lot of misconceptions also. All right, 63%. You know that in terms of batterings, right, only about 5% of reported domestic violence would come from men. All right, 5%. Most Caribbean countries don't have up to 10%.
Men do not indicate that they have been battered.
Hence the title Silent Night.
Okay.
We can begin, Pastor, and you've seen some of them, Pastor. I don't know if they're at your church, but they come with a circle on their face or a circle on their hand, and they swear that is something square or a straight post or something, hit them and create a circle. I figure if I see a circle on a man, I would assume it's a hot Dutch pot cover. but they tell you it's no such thing. No woman can let me man a bad man a big man a heavy. Oh, I want a woman to do that. So there's a lot of masculine pride that's being crushed, and they lie to people, they lie to everybody, they lie to themselves. But the real figures in Jamaica are that, in fact, let's start from the world. The world says to every 2 women who are battered, physical battering, we're not talking about psychological battering, because men endure up to 2 or 3, depending on which country, 2 to 3 times more verbal battering than women do. And that's normal because women speak 3.2 times more than men per day. So that's fine. We're talking about physical battering, right? Physical means a boom, 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 and stab with knife and ray, right? And for the world, I can give you some of the figures. The United States, men are victims of 35% of physical batterings. Scotland, 38%. England, 36%. So you realize the figures are in the 30s, right? Okay. What are the figures for Jamaica? And I'm talking about a study done here with 480 young people who will tell us about what's happening in their families. All right? So we don't interview adults about what's happening in their families because they're going to tell us lies. They tell us that the circle you see is a crap circle that you watch in movies, not the Dutch pot cover. So we ask the young people to tell us what's happening in their families. And so let me start from the top and go through this very quickly with you. All right? If you 25% of all young persons have seen one of their parents hit each other. 25% of adolescents in Jamaica, right? This is a study of 400 odd people have seen their parents fight, okay? And this is mostly so in areas of, and look at this, right? 97% of urban youth, urban male youth, have seen their neighbors fight. Right. Urban females, 87%. Rural males, 87%. Rural females, 70%. The average, therefore, is 85% of any young person you see has seen one of their neighbors fight.
And what impact would that have on their psyche?
It tells them that it's norm.
Okay.
It's the very serious thing. And then if we get to, and this is also by poor people, 98% of poor children have seen somebody fighting.
Poor meaning what?
Poor meaning that their parents are laborers or at the bottom of the economic scale.
Okay.
All right. All right. If you look at how many have seen their persons in their household fighting, as in their parents fighting, 33% of urban males compared to 27% of urban females, and 23% of rural males and 17% of rural females, which means if you live in an urban center, 30% of all young persons living in an urban center has seen their parents fighting physically.
The question I want you to clarify then, Herbs, is what's the root cause of this?
We get into there.
Okay.
And 20% of all rural youth have seen their parents fighting. So in other words,
which means it's better to be rural than urban.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. And 25. The average overall is 25%. All right. If we get to the question of who starts the fight, who is battering who, and so forth, in the same study of 400 odd young people, what we find is 63% of the young people said they are certain it's their father who is the perpetrator of the violence. 63%.
He initiates it?
Yes. And he's the aggressor.
Okay.
And we listen to these young people. It's not a horrid study. We listen to them, speak about what he does, and it's battering. It's proper battering. 63% of any amount of the 25% who claim they saw it in their household describe their fathers as the perpetrator and their mothers. And 20% said it is their mothers who start the fight and plus win the fight. 20%. This is the highest we've seen. This is the highest we've seen. Trinidad is less. Barbados is less. So it tells us that you don't play with a Jamaican woman.
20% mothers start.
20%. Yes, and win the fight. The father is literally the victim of the battering. And 17% of the young people say, well, we cannot tell who winning now. Sometimes my mother start when the money don't come and my father gamble. And sometimes my father start when he want to stop her from starting.
Or coming drunk.
Right, and all of these. So in other words, the so-called 5% and 95% don't hold anywhere at all in the world, and it's nonsense and we need to get it out of our head. What are they fighting for? 3% of the young people said their parents fight for no reason at all.
What percentage for no reason?
3%.
Okay.
The children say they fight constantly,
and they
to
can't
the extent where any topic
initiates.
One boy said to me, my mother could put on a nice dress and my father just start. And man, you go look. It don't really matter. Nothing. There's no topic. They just fight constantly. 27% is for cheating, or infidelity, or suspicion, and all of these things surrounding having multiple partnership and so forth. And 70% is money.
Oh,
seven with a big zero, money.
But then
economics.
But then why would the father be the aggressor because of money?
No, you see, the point is, what we found is that a lot of fathers, when they are pressured for money, they start beating the woman before the woman can ask for the money.
Okay,
so if they go and gamble the money, and come in, and by the time the woman starts to work the money, and the fight starts. So the father jump starts.
He preempts it.
Yes. so in other words, and this is one of the reasons why at our workshop on Saturday, we spent a lot of time making sure that fathers learn how to do wealth accumulation and management, because money is a big problem in this country. Yeah? All right? So in other words, what we're saying here is that the gap between 20% of fathers being battered, as evidenced by young people, without even putting up a fight. 20% of fathers are just straight victims. Apparently in other countries they count it a different way, but our young people says 20% of fathers, 20% of any victim you see is a father who does not put his hand up, don't fight, don't do anything. Alright, what we've been finding is that two sets of stuff. A, when they go to report it to the police, there are 5 reactions from the police. Alright, A, police are in shock, especially because most of the fathers who take a heavy battering are above 5'9". Now that's hard to swallow.
Oh, so that means you and I'm in trouble. Okay, I understand. Okay.
And when you interview these fathers, they tell you, look how big, me can't lick her back. But the point is that the women are putting it on them, and they have permanent scars, they have stab wounds. I mean, there was a father who even when the woman went to report on him to the police, when the police came, he had a knife in him.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. You know, so women have this advantage where when they go to report something, the police move quicker than when a man goes, which is something that needs to change. But the 5 things, the 5 reactions of the police: shock. All right. Schadenfreude, and I'm going to explain what that means. A German word that means laughing at somebody's pain. So a few of the police, female police, says, what? Man, I get licked now. So they laugh at their pain first, and then they sober up and deal with the problem.
Could you hold a point for me, Dr. Hurt?
When we come back.
We'll be right back.
Everybody feel irate when they listen to irate. Everybody loves irate.
Welcome back. You're listening to Ira FM, and this is your late night show. It's called Sex Wise. I'm your host, Dr. Al Bailey, and my co-host tonight is Dr. Herbert Gale, anthropologist and lecturer in the Department of Sociology and Social Work, chairman of Fathers Inc. He's joined by Michael Edward James, program coordinator of Fathers Inc. And we have a special guest in studio with me, Reverend Wayne L. Alexander, pastor and founder of Missions Possible Community Church in Galena. We're looking at the status of fathers in Jamaica. So all you men who are listening, keep your dial locked on RFM. We have looked at children's access to fathers over the past 180 years, the role of fathers, and now we are going to also look at domestic violence and silent night. We're going to look at a rather distressing topic now, Herbert. Murder-suicide in Jamaica. What's going on?
Yeah, and you know, our gender-based violence, the silent night of men, right? This gap between 5% of men reporting that they're being battered and 20% of young people saying that
who are in fact battered.
I am certain that it is my father who is the victim. And in fact, if you look at the work of Jason Ramsey's, he's suggesting that the size of the man is a factor. A lot of the bigger men, like Pastor Alexander and myself, right, because of our size, because in our heads,
easy target.
In our heads, we accept
and we hold that we are too big, right? I mean, I weigh 185 pounds. I figure you weigh over 200 pounds, Pastor, right?
Right about that.
Right, and we are going to say to ourselves, right? There's no way we could hit a woman who's 110 pounds. I will not say that anybody should hit a woman at all or hit anybody. But I'm saying that there's a logic when we speak to women who batter big men. They tell us that, but in Canada, look how I'm big, right? And they tell us they do not take that chance with a smaller male because they are closer in terms of size and therefore a fight is easier to go on. But they will pick on the bigger male. Now, what we found tracking murder-suicides in Jamaica in the last 8 years is that there are a few, we're talking about murder-suicides of Jamaicans in Jamaica, in the United States, or North America, and in Europe also, because we've been tracking murder-suicides across the world in terms of Jamaican families, is that what we found is that men who feel battered at work, battered at home, and so forth, are very likely to snap because they have no outlet. And we've been encouraging men, and we've been encouraging police officers, when a man comes to you, right, and say that, look, I've been brutalized, or I've been battered by my wife, right? Yes, you're gonna go through your 5 reactions of shock, of right, and I gave you the big word, laughter, denial, anger, right? Let me see if I have them all. Right? So there's laughter, there is shock, there's anger, there is revenge thinking, what we call Schadenfreude, and of course denial. Just go through all of those, but try after you're through going into the bathroom and reacting. Right? Some of the policemen get really angry that a big man like this can allow a little man like to beat him up all the while. After you've gone to the bathroom, police officers, all of you who are listening, come back out after you've washed your face and deal with your own personal emotion and make sure that this man gets the idea that there is justice for him also, not because he's a male. Because this can lead to murder-suicide. Because once a man is thrown to a point where he has no outlet, he can self-destruct. All right? So, but let's look quickly in about 3 or 4 minutes at murder-suicides in Jamaica. We've now had internationally and at home over 30 cases. Some cases completed, some cases where there's a failure on one side. In other words, the murder was committed and the suicide was attempted but failed. We still treat it as murder-suicide because there's an attempt. One side went through, the other side unsuccessful. So if you pile all of those, you should have about 30 cases since 2006, since I came back from England and started working on this project. And these cases are both in Jamaica and elsewhere. If you look at we've had at fathers in 22 cases, persons who've come to us.
Over what period of time? Over
the same period of time. We've had 22 cases of persons who've come to us seeking help so that it doesn't go to that because they have feelings like that. Right? Saying to us that I feel like just giving up and just take everybody with me. And once we hear that, take everybody with me, we spend enormous amounts of energy and time trying to see if we can address that problem. All right, so we're working therefore with a data frame of over 50 cases. Those that we have seen and we have been working with, and those that have actually happened. And we're going to share with you some of the stuff that we've learned, and therefore how you can, in your family, look out for signs and begin to help. Personality is the first problem we find.
Personality?
Extreme personalities. Extremely introverted, or extremely loud and boastful, or extroverted.
So both extremes.
Right. We find that men of those two extremes have major difficulty working out their problems. We're not saying, let me just begin because this requires some degree of maturity on my part of my listeners, that we're not saying that you must see a shy guy, and say, me not talk to no shy guy. That's not the point. Because what we found is that nobody has a single factor. What people have is a multiple frame of factors, which means that of the factors I'm going to give you, some people have all of them. Some persons have 3 or 4. But a person who only has one is not a problem. Are you with me so far? I hope you're good. All right. So the first factor is extreme personalities. The people who are warm and humble and in the balance area, those persons are least likely to have these problems because they are better communicators too. 2, education is not a factor. Try and get that in your head. Don't think that because a man have a PhD, right, that he know if he solve all them problems. Right, unless you have a PhD in problem solving. Right, which is, I don't know about that one yet. I don't know, Mike may probably create one at the university later. All right, so education is not a factor. Right, we found there is a stagger towards men who have money problems, but it does not mean that men who have money are not. All right, so that's number 3. Number 4.
Could you backtrack? You mean men who are having financial challenges?
Right.
Okay.
Right. So we're saying financial challenges run across socioeconomic backgrounds. So a poor man can have an economic challenge, but a wealthy man can also have an economic challenge if he can't pay his workers and so forth. Mm-hmm. All right. So let's run that again. So number 1 was personality. Number 2 was education. And we said education is a non-factor because people tend to think that because you're educated, you're an absolutely sweet person. Education helps character formation, but it doesn't cover all your sins. All right? Right, Pastor?
Right.
Okay, good. All right. And number 3, we're saying that money troubles. Every study on murder-suicides focus on money troubles. People having money troubles. All right. Number 4 is very, very critical. Men who invest more in women than they invest in themselves, right? And I'm going to call you a word, and it's going to sound harsh, but I needed to treat this as a harsh one, are baits. Let me go again. Men who invest more in their women, I didn't say your children, don't mix it up. Men who invest more in their women than they invest in themselves are baits for disaster. All right? Believe me.
I hope the men are listening.
Believe me.
In other words, he spends far more of his resources on his woman than on himself.
Let me give you the worst case we have. 17 million. One with a 7. 17 million on one female.
You're talking about mistress, you're talking about wife.
I'm talking about a woman that he invests in.
Be it mistress or wife.
Be it mistress or wife.
What was the motivation?
He's in love.
Okay, I hear you.
You know how men are.
I know.
You know men and loyalty. You know that businesses hinge their business on the men's loyalty. You drink at one bar, you go to one barber. You know that men are like that. All right? 17 million. And she walks away.
I presume it ended in the outcome was not good.
I can tell you because we've made sure that he leaves the country.
Okay, because you're entertaining.
Because we had to get his family to come in from abroad to rescue him.
He was entertaining some violent thoughts.
Okay, stuff we can't even discuss.
Yeah, there you are.
Every day he comes to me, he says 17 million boss. 17 million, you have no idea. One with a big 7 boss. 17 million. And we're saying to our young men, don't take 17 million and invest in anybody, and you invest in the same time frame 3 million on yourself. That's stupid, right? What is the matter with you? I mean, and this is what we're finding. A lot of the cases when they come to us is the same thing. How much school fee me pay, how much whatever and so forth. And when you find the woman, she will tell you, me never ask him for investment by me.
Hold the point out again. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back.
Jamaica's senior national women footballers are back on the road for the first time in 6 years. Orega girls will compete in Group 5 of the CFU playoffs in the Dominican Republic, June 16 to 23, as they start their quest for a spot in the 2015 FIFA World Cup Finals in Canada. The Sporting Choice IRFM will be in the Dominican Republic, covering the team on and off the field of play with live and recorded reports. It comes to you courtesy of Contractors Music Marketing, promoters of Morgan Heritage's new single, Put It On Me. Massive used auto parts for the best parts, best deals and best prices. Call us now at 974-5639. Island Eyewear. Come to Island Eyewear. Complete eyeglasses, only $3,900. Bounce Out Party and Furniture Store. Turtle River Plaza, Ocherias for all your household and party needs. Total Tools, rentals and repairs. Now open in Kingston at 34 Slime Road or 908-0667.
Nesira Spa, 8 Rivers Plaza, Ocherias. Rejuvenate your mind and body. Also all car rental limited. White River, Ocherias. 3 Dumfries Road, Kingston, and 6 Lemuel Road, Maypen. Call 986-6930.
And Mr. T Auto Parts, Main Street Ocherias, now offering massive discounts on headlamps.
Awardee for the Prime Minister's National Youth Awards for Excellence in Entrepreneurship 2013. Nominated for Mogul in Making 2013 by the Jamaica Observer Business Desk. Theo Anthony Smith, affectionately called Chef Theo, at the tender age of 22, built his catering service from the ground up and launched Great House Caterer in August 2011. He's known for his fruit and vegetable carvings and his edible fruit arrangements. This Thursday afternoon on Easy Skanking from 12:15 to 1:15, I have invited him to serve us soul food. Do join me as Chef Theo takes us on his journey of self-realization, self-fulfillment, and entrepreneurship. His favorite saying is from Confucius. Choose a job you love, and you never have to work a day in your life. Heart, mind, and soul to soul.
Then test your soul in element. Shoot the wicked nation. Lightning.
Calling all schools in Western Jamaica, City Sports, the little store with a difference, now has special rates on all medals. Visit us at Shop 4, Westgate Shopping Center, Montego Bay. Telephone 952-2415.
When we step out in the streets, one thing we pray. Get it. Hear a big tune I play and I can bring it start me. Get it. We never take no less than the best of the sure. Guinness, West man a brand, this a brand, from the 8th man a Guinness.
Made up move this week at your favorite bar. Enjoy 2-for-1 Guinness specials and bucket deals, spot prizes, and even more vibe. Guinness, made of more and in the streets. Drink Guinness responsibly. Must be 18 years and older to enjoy. Reggae Radio.
The book of life, the book of life. Sip the water from the book of life. Look at the animal in them pot, but them a cook a spice. What you them said them wanting him to go to heaven to look for Christ. While them a bow down and a worship them images. I went keep yarding life till you reach the far and never wrong nor fall. So still miss, I did it. Life privilege in all the villages to live. To life give praises for these infinite stages. I don't stop in no wages, when Babylon slaves. Them separate man and woman, like them in a
Welcome back. You're listening to IRFM, and this is your late night show. It's called Sex Wise. I'm your host, Dr. Al Bailey, and my co-host is Dr. Herbert Gale, anthropologist and lecturer in the Department of Sociology and Social Work and chairman of Fathers Inc. And he's joined by Michael Edward James, program coordinator, Fathers Inc. And a special institute guest is Reverend Wayne Alexander, pastor and founder of Missions Possible Community Church in Galena and Ocherias. We're looking at the status of fathers in Jamaica. We are looking at children's access to fathers over the past 180 years. the role of fathers, domestic violence and silent night, murder, suicides in Jamaica, and the rights of men as fathers. In about another 5 minutes, we're going to open the lines. I just want Dr. Gale to wrap up his thoughts. The numbers that you should call us are 974-5051, 974-5079-5043, and 1-888-991-4152. This is IRFM. Now, Herbs, you are looking at the root causes for murder, suicide in Jamaica. You said why men are likely to snap. You mentioned extreme personalities. You said education, not a major issue. Financial challenges and men who are baited. You'd also mentioned a man who lost $17 million. Pastor, you also have had an experience with respect to baiting.
Oh yes, actually, I've had sessions with like, for example, a husband who, a farmer, probably couldn't read or write or whatever, met this young lady, fell in love, sent her to university, college, whatever, come back, she came out with her degree and so forth. And of course, all of a sudden, he's not in her class anymore.
They're incompatible.
They're incompatible. I can't take him to meet my friends. Probably they will laugh at him and so on and so forth. After he had invested so much.
Yes.
In her.
Yeah.
Okay, so you could continue your discussion as some of the root causes.
Right. In fact, there are quite a few, but the publication will come out one day. So what is important is the one that's most critical is depression. Right?
Okay.
Depression, and that is why some authors on the area of murder suicide say that murder suicides are easier to prevent than murders, because most of the perpetrators of murder suicides are persons who have been in depression for a very long time. We're talking about domestic murder suicides, not suicide bombings and those areas. We're talking about domestic murder suicides. They've been in depression. 75% of domestic murder suicide cases, the male was depressed for between 6 months to 3 years. So, if you see a male around you depressed, every time you talk to him, everything is man, make me good man. Not say nothing, man. It's time for you to get him to say something. We have to help these young men to communicate. And that's one of the big areas, poor communicators and poor communication skills and all of these things. So we're just appealing to the families out there, the communities out there. You see young men or any male at all or any female who looks depressed, it's not too much to ask and to insist that you find out. I don't mean to insist with them business we tell everybody, All right, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking insisting in trying to say, can I help? Is there any way? Talk to me, right? And if you do that, you could very well save a lot of families.
Okay, thanks, sir. Pastor, could you, because the time is going so fast, Herbs, you could stay the whole night here, really. We have to ask IRFM for a whole night to sort out this particular issue. But Reverend Alexander, tell us quickly, what role do you think the church should and must play in trying to address many of these concerns raised by our guest?
Well, definitely I believe that the church should be more active, in helping fathers to be better fathers in our society. One of the things that I believe that should be a clear no-no. I grew up in a church setting where 7 nights or for the week, the church have some functions. And that, for me, definitely is unhealthy for family.
Oh, Pastor, careful now.
Oh, yes.
You're offending a lot of people.
I tell folks.
Really?
I tell folks all the time.
All the time.
No, I tell folks all the time that it's not every day or night church door open, you must go in there.
Okay.
It makes no sense. Wife is at church and husband is at home, and the next thing you hear, the man start complaining that his wife spending too much time with pastor, not at church again, because pastor. they don't say church, they say pastor. I think you should stay home. At least a few nights for the week. Make it family night. Yeah. You spend some time having, family time with your wife and your children and so forth. And of course, our churches need to put proper and regular training programs in place to educate family.
And men, of course, I think you all know that when it comes to counseling, men is the last person. I mean, you get into
to see counselor.
Just to see a counselor, and most times that is when things are.
Sometimes we have to take it to them, Pastor.
You're right about that.
Yeah, man.
You know, our men, of course, need to be more involved. You know, in the church, be more responsible. We have this saying that the devil find work, give idle hands. And so we need to put programs in place, family life programs, you know, outreach programs, you know, in place. Of course, we need to also understand that the man is a spiritual leader of the home, you know, so he need to lead, to guide his family into the spiritual aspect of life, you know, devotions and things like those. So there's a lot of responsibilities there for fathers as it relates to their role.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Pastor. Herbs, I want you to tell us briefly, what role does Fathers Inc. play in trying to rescue our men from all these challenges that they face?
All right, let me just begin by making people aware that Fathers Inc. is a very small team of men. We're not a massive group with massive resources, but we started out, of course, working with the idea of promoting Father's Day and highlighting good fathers. That's how we started out in 1991. In 2006, we started looking at murder-suicides. We used to have the Model Fathers Award. We've had 12 of them, in which we highlighted a model father. Other entities in Jamaica have caught on with that, and we have left that alone. We may return to it, but what we've done is lots of research. We've made sure we have accurate material for people rather than the constant guessing, because Jamaicans can play good guess games, you know, and it's often wrong, right? I always say to people that good gut feelings is also a toilet issue. So therefore we do research. Yeah. All right. So we've been doing that. We've helped to initiate Boys' Day in Jamaica, and that has taken off and has been doing very well. We've also made sure we've done over 300 outside lectures across the country and workshops and so forth in terms of educating Jamaicans about the role of fathers. We've done over 50 international conferences also. So we've done enormous amounts of work. But I think our biggest pride right now is helping over a dozen youth families. And we call them youth families because there's somebody under the age of 30, right, who has no children, right? They themselves have no children, but their families have handed them their children and everything, and they have been on the edge of just falling over. And we've rescued 13 of those families over the last 10 years. You know, just take a young man whose parents hand everybody over to him, siblings or whatever, and just rescue them, get money, everything, and go around and just make sure we keep them afloat. So it's been a lot of work. It's about education, but hands-on, lots of hands-on work with fathers across the country.
We must congratulate you, sir. How can someone get in touch with Fathers Inc.?
Well, Michael, what's the number?
977-9667.
Could you go a little slow, Michael?
Sorry. 977-9667.
9667.
Yes.
All right, no problem.
977-9667.
Right, thank you.
Everything.
You're listening to IRFM, and this is Sexwise. I'm your host, Dr. Al Bailey, and my co-host tonight is Dr. Herbert Gale, anthropologist and lecturer in the Department of Sociology and Social Work, chairman of Fathers Inc., and Michael Edward James is with us, program coordinator of Fathers Inc., and a special guest in studio is Reverend Wayne Alexander, pastor and founder of Missions Possible Community Church in Galena and Otrius. You can now join us in the discussion for the next 15 minutes. Our numbers are 974-5051, 974-5079, 974-5043, 1-888-991-4152. We're looking at the status of fathers in Jamaica, children's access to fathers, the role of fathers, domestic violence, murder-suicides, and Herb, could you just summarize for us quickly what are the rights of men as fathers?
Oh, wow. There's actually...
Do we have rights?
Yeah, they're actually, because once you have responsibilities, you must have rights.
There you are.
But let me just say to people that the world has not yet got to the right of termination of pregnancy regarding men. All right, so I don't want anybody to jump at us with that one, because whilst men have a responsibility, their right is not yet forthcoming on that topic. All right, so men always coming to me, Herbs, they want me to take care of me and all kind of something, but me can't tell him what I say, boy, terminate that one day. And the world has not got there yet. Okay. All right.
So men do not have the right to demand your piece.
To demand what happens to a woman's body.
Okay.
Not yet. All right. But let me touch on some critical stuff that people have been asking about. One, the right to their monies after they've discovered that a child is not theirs and they've spent 10, 15, 20 years taking care of that child, and the child is a jacket. At the presentation on Saturday, the family court, our representative of the family court, stated categorically that the man has to provide the DNA, the money for the DNA. After he has done so, if the child is not his, he can ask the woman to give him back his money, and B, he can also take her to court and sue her for all the years that the child is not.
There you are, men.
Right.
If you have got a jacket, you need to be reimbursed. Okay.
But 60% of men don't
pursue it.
No, they continue to take care of the child.
Okay.
I want to big them up.
Okay.
I think we have a call, so let's.
We have a call. Welcome to Sex Wise. We have our special guest, Dr. Gale. Please go ahead. I think we lost that caller. Yeah, so that's interesting. So the men have a right for reimbursement.
Yes.
Of course, that's great. You can call us at 974-5051, 974-5079, 974-5043, and 1-888-991-4152. This is RFM. Please go ahead, sir.
You know what was funny? On Saturday, men were actually saying bop, 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 bop in the conference. Because it's the first time that men were actually knowing that the laws of Jamaica protect them. You know, that if you've been on the heavy weight of the cloak of paternity fraud, that you can actually, that it is actually a civil matter, that you can actually take the person to court if the person knowingly did so. Not saying you'll win. I'm not saying that you will win, right? We can't guarantee you that, but you can. But what I'm repeating is that a lot of men, 2/3 of men, based on not just studies in Jamaica but elsewhere, after bonding with that child for so long, including persons that we know that have come at Father's Inc. and they've bonded with a child for 10, 15 years, Pastor, you should know that they're not going to break that bond with the child. All right? I think we have a call. Let's take a call.
A caller, welcome to Sex Wise.
Yes. Good night, guys.
Good night to you, sir. Please go ahead.
All right. Herbs, you're back.
Yes, man. What's up?
All right. I need to address the pastor and yours, Pastor Alexander. How can the scientific discipline that you bring to the situation be intertwined with the spiritual that Pastor Alexander and others in the church bring to the situation?
Right.
When you answer that, I'll give him a reason why I ask.
The scientific discipline. How does it?
The Dr. Herbert Gale and scientists like himself who do these anthropological studies, and the data, and they give you the hard observatory data, along with the spiritual kingdom principles going out of the Word of God.
Well, the thing about it, it is important to know that the church's responsibility mainly is for the spiritual development of a person. So the scientific, the scientists and the psychologists and folks, they will give you the data, they will do the study. That will show up really the great imbalance in our society. But we, the church, we have to play our role in trying to correct these imbalances and these failures from a spiritual perspective, you know. And as I mentioned earlier on, seminars and teachings and men being involved and so forth. When a man come in the church, if you don't have him get involved in some way or another, some projects or whatever, be it internal or external, then he's going to get bored, you know, and probably we lose him down the road.
Why I'm asking the question, gentlemen, is because, you know, there's a scripture, I think, Pastor can bear me. It says we all prophesy in part, you know. There's no one body or individual who prophesies the entire whole in humanity.
Yeah.
The scenarios. So God is the author of all the various disciplines. God is the author of science. God is the author of the spiritual discipline. And whenever any one side is going to take the whole and run with it, then we have an imbalance.
Yes.
I'm of the view that the kingdom principles is it can be borne out through history, that if the family unit adopt a lot of the kingdom principles and values within the whole development of their home and their children, and the relationship between the man and the woman, I believe that there will be a lessening of the tendency to the disequilibrium or the dysfunctionality that happens in marriages and in relationships, which ultimately impacts the nuclear family, which ultimately impacts the nation. Can anybody speak to that?
Master? All right. No, you're saying that once people follow the tenets of old, let me use the word old here, meaning that from the Hebrew, from the various frames from which our Bible and the tenets of
tried and proven wisdom principles
has come, that a lot of this
remove the word old.
Right. No.
Timeless.
Right, all right. That once that is so, then a lot of the stuff that we've been observing would not be there to be observed, because those frames have leadership and guidance. That's what I'm getting from you.
Yes, because even the gunman have Bible in his back pocket.
Oh yes, quite.
So the principles
ironic.
we're not saying you must be confrontational,
right,
and autocratic in how you impart the gospel or the principles of the Bible. We are saying that in a very open-minded way, the spiritual leaders, along with the scientific leaders like yourself, should find a way to work together and form a framework, because there are a lot of dysfunctionalities within the church.
Okay, Carl.
Lots of divorces and marital and relationship problems in the church, just as well as in the secular world.
Okay, yes. Carl, thanks very much for your contribution tonight.
All right, Dr. Al Bailey.
Yes, sir. It's good to hear from you.
All right, bro.
Bye-bye. Herbs, I want to just run through quickly some more rights of men for me.
Right. So we're looking at the fact that there is another one that's critical, the Gender Neutral Child Maintenance Act. All right, meaning that if a woman earns $100,000, I'm giving an anecdote, an example so people can follow, and you earn $100,000, the cultural nonsense in Jamaica that says my money is her money and her money is her money should not apply. Jamaica is one of the countries that suffer from this serious nonsense that a woman's money is her money and a man's money is a woman's money. All right? It should not apply when you have a child. You can run those types of jokes and carry on. We advise people not to do that, because partnership is more peaceful and more productive. All right? 2 P's. More peace in the home and more production. All right? When you put your monies together and work together as friends and as partners. All right? But we're saying that problem, there is actually protection of men under the law that says if the woman is earning money, she can't come for your money to take care of the child or children and bag her money. There's a Gender Neutral Child Maintenance Act.
Okay. How can he force her to help to maintain the child?
Oh, he goes to the family court.
Okay.
The family court.
So men, now you know you have a you have the opportunity to sue the lady to help to look after the child.
Yes.
Totally agree.
And by the way...
Joy, don't look at me like that. It's,
by the way,
men are now asserting their rights.
Let me just point out to men that the family court is far more friendly to men now than it has been in the past.
Okay.
All right, this is the evidence we're getting, not what the family court tells us. This is the evidence we're getting from men who've been to the family court, that things are different now than it was 10, 15 years or so ago.
Okay.
All right? So that's a critical one to look at. All right. There's also the matter of access to your children, and in fact, it's a myth that we have that once a man goes to court for his child, that the court automatically gives the child to the woman. That's a myth. We have cases from Fathers Inc. where the father has won custody of the child, and we also know the data from the family court, as far as we know, that even though mothers will win more than fathers, and this is the case right across the world, mothers do win more than fathers. A father who is stable, who has the resources and have a more stable family and so forth, the family court is going to look for the best interest of the child. And if that father provides a scenario that is better, he is very likely to win custody of the child. So we're going to ask men not to go around with chips on your shoulder saying everything bad about pressure me and so forth. Go and find out. You can't fail unless you try. All right?
Oh, and Herbs, and also men should also, anytime they buy things for the child, keep the receipt.
Yes.
And if you're going, also go with somebody else who is a witness, because you need these things in court.
Right. Okay. Great.
Okay, just one last right before we wrap up.
All right. Mike, one more.
Mike, you have any rights you want to remind us, apart from keeping the receipts, which is quite useful.
It may sound cheeky and mean and cheap.
You have to watch yourself.
But a lot of fathers go into court and trying to impress the judge but they have nothing to show. They have absolutely nothing to show. So try and make sure you have your papers.
Yes, sir.
All right?
Really, yes, please go ahead, sir.
Oh, and on that note, also make sure that your name is on the birth certificate, because without your name on there, you have no case.
Yes.
There you are.
Yes.
And you're not a father unless the DNA says you're a father. Just reminding fathers.
Gentlemen, the time is running along so rapidly. We're just like starting from my left, Reverend Alexander, followed by Dr. McGill and Michael. Just summarize quickly for us what your thoughts are with respect to the status of fathers in Jamaica. Reverend Alexander.
Well, actually, since I'm the pastor, I might just conclude on a spiritual note. Of course, you will realize that a lot of great men in the Bible that we quote as fathers, many of them have made great mistakes, and they have failed in many areas of fatherhood. And we should learn from their mistakes. And just a list, just a few examples. David, he was paralyzed by his past failures. Laban, he made his children compete for his affection. Even Jacob, he turned a blind eye on sibling rivalry. Saul, he made it difficult for his children to honor him. Even Abraham, the father of all nations, he abandoned his child. Eli, he failed to discipline his children. You know the story of Eli. His two sons were prostituting in the temple. He knew about it. He did nothing about it. Even Lot, he pitched his family tent near temptation. And the list goes on and on and on about fathers who have failed in the Bible. And we, of course, want to learn from the mistakes of these men and even great men of today and don't repeat them.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Gale.
Right, just to say to people that we're advising, we're admonishing, we're begging families to try and establish a partnership. Please understand that a child needs a mother and a father, right? And we're going to remind people to stop the conflict and see if you can create cooperation, see if you can meet each other halfway, and see if we can have better families.
Michael?
Yes, I believe that the family, the mother and the father, they both share, areas that are strong points. I also believe that I have a positive outlook on fathers, you know. I have to say happy belated Father's Day to my father, Joe James. He has been a great father to me, and he has kept persons around him similar to himself, to the point that my experiences are probably different from some other persons, in that I have a number of father figures in my life, and I've noticed that my friends also have the same. My best friend has 2 fathers, 2 families actually. He has 2 mothers and 2 fathers, because even though his parents have separated, they have created a bond with each other. So on his wedding day, he actually had 2 fathers and 2 mothers.
Thank you very much, Michael. And I would just like to therefore end the show by reminding you that fathers tend to be defined by the 5 P's: participator, problem solver, playmate, principal guide, provider, and preparer. We've had a good show. We have looked at the status of fathers in Jamaica, children access to fathers over the past 180 years, the role of fathers, domestic violence, murder, suicide, and the rights of men. We have been graced in the studio by the presence of Dr. Herbert Gale, anthropologist and lecturer in the Department of Sociology and Social Work, chairman of Fathers Inc., Michael Edward James, program coordinator of Fathers Inc., and of course my good friend Reverend Wayne L. Alexander, who was not subjected to any rigorous theological discourses tonight, pastor and founder of Missions Possible Community Church in Galena. Of course, we'd like to thank you, the callers, for joining in tonight in the show. Joy Morgan, who, as usual, is very vivacious and there to ensure that things run smoothly. And, of course, Brian, who did the technical operating. And you, our loyal listeners, thank you very much for choosing IRFM. You've been listening to Sex Wise, and I've been your host, Dr. Al Bailey, wishing you a good night.